Okay, in this video, we're going to grow upon our example of methods. So in the last video, we wrote a method called add numbers that took two parameters and did not return anything. It actually printed out the sum in here. Let's say now that I want to actually return the sum back to the main program, and maybe the main program will print it or the main program will do something else with it. So I'm going to remove my print line from this method, right? And I'm going to say in my header for this method, originally I had void here. This void means that the method add numbers does not send anything back to the person who called it. It does accept two arguments or two parameters, but it does not return anything. So now I'm going to change it. I'm going to say it's going to return an integer. Okay? Now, notice I don't name the integer. The integer, I don't give a variable name. I just say that this method is going to return an integer. Okay? So the way I return that value back is I actually type the keyword return, and then I say what I want to return. In this case, I want to return the variable sum. I could return, 2. It wouldn't be useful, but I could. I could put a hard-coded number in there. But I want to return whatever value is in sum, which is the sum of these two numbers that were passed in. Now, what's different when I call the method that returns something? Well, I could call it just like this, and it's going to return back, in this case, the 5. But I'm not doing anything with it. This would not be an error. It would actually run fine. I could run this program, and it runs fine, right? Program starting, program ending, because I didn't print anything out in here, and I didn't do anything with what gets returned from add numbers. So I could do a couple things here. One, I could create a variable, right? Sum, or anything. I could call it total here. I want to prove to you that this name and this name have nothing to do with anything. And I could say total equals. So now what's going to happen here? It's going to call add numbers. Add numbers is going to add the two numbers and return back a value. So whatever value gets returned is kind of going to replace this right-hand side with that value and then assign it into total. So I could print it out now. I could print out, right, the total of the two numbers is total. And this would now return the sum of 2 and 3. Let's see if that works, right? The total of the two numbers is 5, right? Okay, so in this case, in this video, we had a method that takes two integer values. It returns an integer value, and the way I returned it is I actually put a return statement in my method. Typically it occurs at the bottom of your method, but it may, depending how complex your method is, there could be throughout your method. And then when I make a call to this method that returns something, I want to store it into a variable so that I could use it later. Now, as we've done before, we could have, I'm going to comment this line out so it's no longer used, right? And I could have, right in here, instead of putting total, I could have put add numbers x comma y, right? And this print line would have then called the method add numbers with a 2 and a 3, because the 2 and the 3 were here. It would then return the sum, and that sum of 5 would replace that I just highlighted. So it would just actually print out a 5 right in there. And if we run it, the total of the two numbers is 5. I don't recommend you do this. I personally, it's not wrong. There's no rule in programming that you can't do that. I find it more useful if you do all your calculations and things like that outside of your print lines. I think it's just easier to read the code than it is if you embed calls to methods inside your print line. But again, probably half the YouTube viewers on here will disagree with me and half will agree with me. The benefit is that I'm the one creating the video, so I get to convey my thoughts. So anyway, the method that returns a value, you state the type of the value. Now, at this point in your programming, you only get to return one thing. So in this case, I chose to return an integer. I could have returned a float, I could have returned a char, I could have returned a double, I could have returned a string. So for now, the only thing you really get to return is one variable. Later on, as your programming skills grow, I'll show you ways to actually return more than one thing from a method, but as of now, you get to return one thing from each method.